Welcome to Mysterious&Chilling. Tonight, I have a story that will haunt your thoughts and keep you awake. Listen carefully because once you hear it, you might never forget it. She was a little girl who feared death. Not just her own, but the thought of losing anyone she loved made her heart pound, and her chest tighten so severely that sometimes she would faint. Her mother had tried countless times to calm her, explaining that life stretched on endlessly, that her little brother, her parents, even her grandmother would all live for many, many years. "Think about it," her mother said one evening, sitting beside her in the dim light of their living room. A year has 365 days. Each day has 24 hours. Each hour 60 minutes, and each minute 60 seconds. That's thousands and thousands of seconds. Life is so long that we can barely imagine it. The girl tried to count in her head, but the numbers tumbled out in chaos. She could not grasp it, and that only made her fear grow. Then one day, when she came home from school, she found a boy waiting for her outside their small house. He was smaller than her, yet his eyes carried the weariness of ages, and his hair was an unnatural silver, glinting under the late afternoon sun. "So you're afraid of death," he said. His voice was calm but carried a certainty that made her shiver. He did not ask, he stated it, as though he already knew everything. The girl nodded, unable to speak. "Do you want me to teach you how to run from death?" he asked. She blinked. "Is that even possible?" she whispered. Her mother had never mentioned such a thing. The boy tilted his head. "Look at me. I've been running from death for over 100 years, and I can keep running for 10 times that. You just need to understand how." He spoke slowly, as if counting each word. "In a year, there are 365 days. Each day has 24 hours. Each hour 60 minutes, and each minute 60 seconds. The girl finished, her voice trembling. "It's too much to imagine, I know." He nodded once. Then his voice turned colder, sharper. "But to gain this, you must pay a price. The life of someone you love. Perhaps your little brother, perhaps your mother, perhaps your father." The girl shook her head violently. She would never sacrifice them. He studied her with those unnaturally old eyes, and after a long pause he said, "Very well, then watch closely." He opened his palm, revealing 3 shoelaces, worn and faded. Slowly, deliberately, he wove them together, not in a simple braid, but in a complicated, almost ritualistic pattern. The girl leaned in, absorbing every twist and turn, memorizing it. "What is this?" she asked, her voice a whisper. "If you braid your hair like this," he said, "it will form a cord strong enough that death cannot cut it. You know how humans die when death cuts their thread of life?" She nodded, remembering the stories of heroes from ancient myths, the threads that tied mortals to fate. "When death cannot reach you, it will rage. It will come for those around you. But you will have time. And remember, braid only at night, when death cannot see. If it sees, it will strike before the braid is finished." "Can I braid the threads of others?" she asked. "All things have their price," he answered, but his gaze softened slightly. That night the girl woke quietly, her room dark and still, her small hands trembling. She braided her hair according to the boy's instructions. One braid, tight and intricate, glimmered faintly in the moonlight. Then, one by one, she braided her brother's hair, her mother's, her father's, and finally her grandmother's. Each braid seemed to hum with energy, threads intertwining as if alive. When the sun rose, she found that the braids were not merely threads in hair. They stretched outward, invisible yet tangible, extending far beneath the earth. From deep underground came a low, feral roar, a sound so primal it made her knees tremble. Each of her family members was tethered in the same way, their lives now bound by cords that pulsed like veins of silver in the dim light. Her grandmother's voice broke the eerie quiet. "What have you done?" "I wanted to save all of you from death," the girl cried, tears streaking her face. Her mother's hand rested on hers, steady and warm. "Death saves us from worse fates," she said softly, almost as if she were trying to reason with an invisible force lingering in the shadows. And that was when they felt it. The ground trembled again, the air thickened, and the presence came. Something immense, unseen but full of intent, had noticed them. It pulled at the cords with a strength that made the girl's entire body ache. She tried to hold on, tried to resist, but the cords were unyielding. The boy's voice echoed in her memory. "Not everything can be outrun. Not everything can be controlled. And everything has a price." The roar grew louder, closer, filling the house with a vibration that seemed to come from beneath the earth itself. The walls shook. Shadows danced violently, and the girl realized that what she had created was more than a braid. It was a beacon, a signal, a chain linking them all to something ancient, something patient, something waiting. Every heartbeat in the room sounded louder than the last. Every second stretched and pulled at the girl's mind. She wanted to scream, to run, to undo what she had done, but the threads held her fast. Her eyes widened as she saw the shadows on the walls start to move independently, curling, stretching, forming shapes she could not name. They reached toward the braids, searching for the unprotected. The house itself seemed to breathe, to pulse, to respond to the presence from beneath. The girl felt a cold, wet pressure against her mind, as though the world itself were aware of her defiance. She could feel death circling, invisible yet tangible, tasting the air, sniffing for the one thread it could cut. And then, the world seemed to pause. Silence fell, heavy and complete. Even the wind outside held its breath, but the threads pulsed faintly, glimmering with a soft silver light, a fragile defiance against what waited below. The girl swallowed hard. Her heart raced, and a thought pierced through the terror. She had never faced anything like this before. Not school, not bullies, not the dark corners of her imagination. This was real, and it was waiting, watching. The shadows continued their restless dance. The roar beneath the earth had softened to a growl, patient and patient. Every breath felt like a countdown. Every moment stretched like a thin wire. And then she remembered the boy's words again. "When death cannot reach you, it will come for those around you." The girl looked at her family. Their faces were pale, eyes wide with confusion and fear. She realized then that her attempt to save them had unleashed something far older and far more cunning than herself. The sun rose higher in the sky, but the light could not reach the corners where shadows pooled. Every tick of the clock felt heavier, each second a reminder that the world had changed in ways she could not understand. The threads of the braids glimmered faintly, and she knew they were her only shield. But what lay beneath the earth, what waited in the shadows, she could not see, and she could not know. The house felt alive. The shadows whispered. The cords pulled. and the girl understood, with a chill that ran through every bone in her body, that life had become a delicate balance between what was visible and what lurked just beyond perception. Even after the sun had risen fully, the girl could not shake the feeling that something was watching, waiting just beyond the edges of her vision. She remembered stories her grandmother used to tell her, stories of ancient guardians who walked unseen among humans, keeping balance between life and death. Perhaps what lurked beneath the earth was one of those guardians, angered by human attempts to cheat fate. In the days that followed, the girl noticed small, strange things, shadows that moved against the light, whispers in the wind that carried her name, and fleeting glimpses of shapes that vanished when she blinked. Every time she passed a mirror, she thought she saw not only herself, but also the faint shimmer of the thread she had braided, pulsing like living veins. Her family seemed safe for now. But safety, she realized, was only a thin veil stretched over something far older, far wiser, and far more patient than any human mind could comprehend. The cords she had woven were not merely protection. They were a connection, a bond with something that would not forget. And sometimes, late at night, when the house was still and the world outside silent, she could hear it, a low rumble beneath the ground, like a heartbeat not her own. A reminder that every action has its price, every attempt to outsmart death leaves a mark, and some threads, once woven, can never be undone. The girl understood at last that life and death were not enemies but dancers in a rhythm she could never fully control. And while she had learned to braid the threads of life, she had also learned the most important truth of all. The fear of death is powerful, but love, courage, and care for those around you are stronger, even in the face of something beyond imagining. Perhaps one day, she thought, she might see the boy again, the one who had taught her this forbidden knowledge, and perhaps then she would truly understand the limits of running and the strength in standing still, facing the shadows, and holding on to those she loved. Until that day comes, she and her family live under the watchful eyes of something ancient. And every night the threads hum softly, a reminder that even in the quietest moments, the unseen world is never truly at rest.